It's August the 27th, 2011. I'm Mike Benedetti. This is 508, a show about Worcester. Today on the show, City Council candidate Jim Kersten. Hi, Jim. How's it going?
Very good, Mike. How you doing?
Very good. And as usual, Brendan Melican.
Morning. How are you?
Okay. And this week, trash on the ground, drug paraphernalia. We have some root beer. Over there, there's a sock on a bush. That's where we are today. Today is one of the shows where we're going to talk to a city council candidate about the issues. It's crazy. It's kind of irrelevant to talk about the issues in Worcester politics. I know, but we're going to do it today. These are the questions that we developed over the last few months of talking to guests and talking to people in the community. We're going to revise these questions as the election.
Talk to each other.
What?
We really just talk to each other.
We mostly talk to. Well, these are questions which reflect what we're interested in and what the people who watch the show enough to write us email are interested in. These aren't necessarily the community issues. This is some small group of people's issues.
Nobody really complained yet, so we roll with it.
I think it's gone fine so far. Anyway, we're going to revise them, so if you want to email pieandcoffee@gmail.com, you can, and give us some feedback on the questions. I think we're going to have to cut some questions because the list is a little too long. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
You ready? Are you ready? You should look at me rather than the camera during the interview. We should have talked about that before. Are you running at large?
I am.
Okay, and what line of work are you in?
I work for the Department of Transportation right now. I work in the bridge section. We repair and build new bridges.
Okay. What is the role of local government in regulating the day-to-day lives of citizens, and where is the limit?
There is a role, not really in regulating. I mean, the city council has done things that over-regulate. The cigarette thing is one. Making an issue.
That was the thing where pharmacies and only pharmacies were banned from.
Correct.
Selling cigarettes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some places couldn't have big signage
Right.
Advertise this outside. I actually agree with the signage part. I'm comfortable with that. But having, saying to one business, you can sell this legally controlled substance and another one you can't, I don't think is really fair business.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have supported that.
Okay.
But and also making an issue out of chickens. I mean, if you want to have chickens in your backyard and it's in the proper way, I don't really have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's focus on some of the bigger issues that are facing the city and not
get bogged down in that little stuff.
Well, yeah. This council seems to love the little stuff and not the important stuff that really affects the lives of the people that live here.
What's your personal vision for the city?
It's got to be a very a nice, comfortable place to live.
Okay.
There are a lot of great things that happen in the city, but you really have to dig and pay attention to find them. If you go on the websites, there's the concerts at Institute Park.
Yeah.
To find out when those are, or even to see what they have on their what they're playing that day, it's not very easy to find. If we had like a community calendar in Worcester,
Mm-hmm.
where we could put events up there, different things so people can it's Saturday, I'm kind of free. What's going on?
Right.
Oh, ice cream scoops down in Elm Park. That's great. Art in the park's going on. Whatever it is, I think would be very beneficial to the city. But in my vision too is it's a great place to live where you can find a good job and a great place to raise your family and have your kids receive a good education. I think that's a pretty.
It seems like there's been different local event calendars in the past, and it really feels to me like it's fragmented, maybe because of Facebook or something. I don't know. That the TNG and the Worcester Magazine, whatever, have their calendars, but the idea of there's still so much that it's hard to figure out and navigate.
I think that one of the big problems is we've had social web for quite some time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it functions as a calendar and a scheduling system, but it doesn't integrate with any of the things like you just mentioned, like Facebook, right, or like Twitter, or so. I think people have gotten to the point where they're used to information coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have to go searching things out because Facebook is going to dump everything on me. And then the one repository for events in the city, a lot of people don't even know exists because it lives on this island by itself and hasn't really been good at getting that data out to the customers.
This is one thing we haven't talked to any candidates about so far is calendar issues, but it's true.
And if you put it on the city website, you also encourage people to use that site. I mean, it does have a lot of resources on it with with information that's really pertinent to people. Stuff on the tax rates, stuff on the real estate assessment,
Mm-hmm.
things that I think people would want to kind of read about if they knew existed there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
lure them in with classical music and then you hit them over the head with tax abatements.
and it's just a way to increase traffic to the city site. And it's also one place everyone knows to go there.
Right.
And you could have it there, and I think it would work well.
What's your What does it say here? What's your view on the relationship between the council and the city manager?
My view on that is that honestly, when Tim Murray left to become lieutenant governor, there was a huge power vacuum that went on in the city government.
Yeah.
And the manager largely stepped in and filled that role.
Mm-hmm.
There's no consensus on the council right now to move an agenda. Everyone kind of has their own splintered feelings, and there's no unity. And that really needs to happen, because in our form of government, we need the council to drive the agenda, not the manager. And no fault to the manager, actually, but he shouldn't be driving the agenda. The council should.
And so this is a problem of people stepping up rather than...
Yeah, you just need to stand up and really talk about things that you believe in, and not be scared to stand up, and speak your mind on an issue, and work with other people to come to a solution. I mean, why is it with the tax rates in this city that it's a huge issue every year? No one's ever sat down and done a long-term comprehensive tax plan in this city.
Really?
Yeah.
And so then you would have something where when it came around, you would then the council could say, well, we have this sort of consensus on how we're going to do taxes, and rather than debating the issue anew, we can sort of say, where are we in regards to some sort of plan that everybody has some kind of buy-in on.
Right, and you'd have benchmarks in that plan, so you could see where things are going and tweak it along the way. I mean, nothing's perfect right out the gate, and to not have that is not good for the residents. It's not good for the business community.
Yeah. Oh, but just because they don't have any sense of what their taxes are going to be like year to year?
Yeah, I mean, you have no clue what's going on. Where are we going? And if you were going to have a business model to relocate your business here, I don't think taxes are one of the driving forces, but it is an important issue. And to understand that and put that in your business plan, your long-term business plan, I think makes sense.
Yeah. What is your opinion on neighborhood councils, bringing neighborhood councils to the city?
I'm actually very supportive of neighborhood councils. Again, it goes back to people not wanting to stand up. I think the people, the current city councilors, like having all the power.
Yeah.
Whereas, if the neighborhood council wants to stand up and have people from the neighborhood make some decisions, I mean, that's who the city council is supposed to represent. Like, those decisions should be being made, for them. And if they feel like they're not, then the neighborhood council.
Then they have alternative recourse to the district councilor.
Yeah,
and it sort of takes some of that whatever away from the district councilor.
Yeah, and it's not about. I mean, I'm not in this to assume responsibility and power here. It's I'm here to represent the citizens of Worcester, and if they can represent themselves in a citizen council along with the city council, I think that'd be fantastic.
Okay. Where should the city draw the line? Oh, this is the long economics question. So you can just kind of take from this what you will. Where should the city draw the line in taking responsibility for development? Where should the city draw the line when selling off existing assets? How should the city be making its money? What's the correct tax rate for Worcester homeowners?
All right, can we knock those off one at a time?
Sure.
So what was the first one?
The first one was where it was basically what is the limit of the city's responsibility for development? The city government's responsibility.
The city should be on the front line, encouraging development to come here. Everyone always speaks about attracting new businesses here, which is extremely important. Mm-hmm. But we need to not only attract new business here, but help businesses here expand. One thing that I propose is to have a 5-year tax abatement or a tax credit for any commercial property that if you invest in your property and you increase the value, mm-hmm. whatever value you increased, you get a 5-year tax credit.
So that this would mean that you would be locked in on whatever the initial value was.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if your value is $100,000, you do you do an addition. Now your value is $150,000.
You're only going to be paying
years.
on $100,000.
Right, for 5 years.
Okay.
And no money comes out of the city coffers on that. That's in 5 years then we get the additional thing, and it gives the business time to get something back on their investment. That's one thing we can do to help the businesses that currently exist in Worcester.
Yeah.
And we do need to go out, and it is the city's responsibility to make sure there's a vibrant business community, because that's the key to jobs,
right,
and actually long-term tax relief.
Where should the city draw the line when selling off existing assets?
With existing assets, I mean, you have to look at feasibility and use
mm-hmm.
of the facility. A perfect example is Downing Street.
Okay.
here's an asset that they tried to transfer without any public input.
Right.
The public should have been involved. There should have been a public meeting.
This is this thing. Just to recap for people, this is part of the quid pro quo around Clark University's pilot payments, their payment in lieu of taxes payments that they were going to give the city some money on an ongoing basis, and in exchange for this, that was sort of the quid, and the quo was Clark is going to get to take Downing Street and basically make it a pedestrian thoroughfare.
Yeah, which could be a good idea, but the residents of the community, in that neighborhood,
they were not involved.
They were not involved, and they need to be sat down, or they need to have the opportunity to sit down and say, look, this is the proposal. What are you willing to, to get for Downing Street?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a playground in your neighborhood? Is it, whatever you want, and for their pilot money to go to.
Mm-hmm.
If that neighborhood is going to sacrifice something, that's the neighborhood that should get something from it.
Yeah. How should the city be making its money?
The city should be making its money off there's two ways the city makes its money. It's residential tax rate and the commercial tax rate. That's the main way the city makes its money.
Taxes.
Yeah.
Property tax.
And it should be structured in a way where the most vulnerable people on a fixed income, retirees, don't struggle to pay their property taxes.
Okay.
But a way also too where businesses can feel like they can grow and expand. And we need to really create a climate that is good to business, but also protects the residents.
What is the correct tax rate for Worcester homeowners? By which I mean, if the city council goes up on a mountain and God hands them a tax rate on a stone tablet,
Yep.
What is that tax rate?
I don't think there is a perfect number.
Okay.
If you look back, in 1980, excuse me, Worcester residents paid about 49% of the tax burden.
Okay.
In 1990, it was like 56.
Okay.
In 2000, I think it went down to 52.
Okay.
Now we're right up around 63% of the tax burden falls on the residents.
Okay.
We need to do something. That's a glaring issue there.
Is that because commercial taxes are going down, or that's because businesses are going away?
I think more it's that businesses are going away.
Okay.
And we need to do something to get at that. But the correct tax rate, it's not so much what the rate is, but it's how much you're paying. I mean,
you mean like how many $1,000s a year?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and also, I mean, if you want a proper tax rate, you need proper assessment on your property, which I don't
Right.
think is going on right now in the city. And I know they're focusing on it, but that needs to really happen before you get a proper tax rate. You get proper assessment.
I was talking to somebody this week about their frustration. Someone who also talks to city councilors and city council candidates. Their frustration in getting a good conversation around tax rate stuff. And I'm going to ask you the question that I suggested that they should press people on, which is, do you think like a 0% tax rate and like commercial taking up all of the taxes is reasonable? Like 0% for homeowners and whatever is left over for commercial?
No, I don't think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Because homeowners do use a lot of the city services as well. I mean,
Yeah.
schools, roads. And I think there is a certain amount of responsibility to help pay for those things. And, and me as a citizen, I mean, I like a lot of the services we provide. I like my leaves being picked up outside my house. I like the fact that my streets are plowed.
Yeah.
And if you did that, I mean, shifting that cost, that'd be, I think, $160 million shift over to the business community. That would not spur growth. That would hurt the small businesses. And I think we're all in this together. I mean,
Right.
The solution to this problem isn't the residents win or the businesses win. It's we need to build a bridge together and say, look, what works well for everyone here.
Okay.
We need a regressive tax solidarity movement.
What do you mean? What did you say?
We need a regressive taxation solidarity movement. That's what we're calling for.
Do you have any input at this point in the discussion?
No,
about
but I
happened
like
to
that
this?
angle. That is that one of the places where there is no really right answer, right? I mean, because we're talking tax rate, so we're talking percentages, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that's fluid. I mean, because what I end up paying is
I believe that there's always an answer.
Yeah,
I believe
there
that
has to be. And maybe the answer is that that's the wrong question. I mean, because if we're talking about like my tax rate on my house, that's dependent on economic factors. It's not dependent really even on the performance of the city. I mean, my home value could go up, which it has in the past. My home value has gone up while the city's economy has stayed relatively stagnant because our city's residential market has been impacted by outside forces. So my property values go up, which means even though the percentage stays the same, the tax rate goes up. And that's happening artificially because while the median household income in Worcester may be staying completely level, the value of my home is increasing because of a push from the outside, raising people buying, people raising.
So now the city is saying, despite the fact that you're probably not earning more money, we want more taxes from you because
actually,
your real estate's more
earning
valuable.
less money because the middle class hasn't seen pay increases since the 70s. Sorry to start taking over your show, Joe. But yes, I mean, so the rate stays the same with lowest residential tax rate, but the core value incurred there or the cost incurred there keeps going up. So maybe that's the problem: is they're always focused on a rate or a percentage, which only makes sense if the Worcester economy is moving forward at the same pace that the national and world economy is moving forward. And while the national economy might see its 3% growth every year, I would really love to see the folks from the city come down and say, yes, we have seen 3% economic growth in the city of Worcester over the last 30, 40 years. And if we haven't, well, then again, it goes back to, is that the right? Might that be the wrong question to ask? That the rate might not be the focus. It might be the system itself is irreverent. I'm not going to get that word out this early in the morning. It's wicked broken.
So what, you're right. So what you're saying is that, I'm sorry, I just got a phone call in the middle of that and ignored half of what you just said.
Are we doing it all over again?
I'm going to summarize and say this: is that we use the value of people's homes or the real estate where they live as a proxy for how well the economy is doing, how rate of inflation, all kinds of other things, and we say, okay, like this is something that we can kind of agree on is how much your house is worth, and so we're going to tax you based on this because this is sort of a proxy for all these complicated economic factors that would tell us how things are going and how expensive it is to run the city.
The middle part of the last decade,
and it sometimes breaks down. Sometimes there's a disconnect.
It almost always breaks down. Since the 70s, it's almost constantly breaking down, right? And I think that's one of the bigger issues with the folks who are willing to bring up the idea that maybe we shouldn't be focused on regressive taxes in the first place, is that if you are middle part of the last decade, right? I mean, if you may have very well seen a 50 to 70% increase in the value of your home here in Worcester. Now, I don't think everyone living in those homes in Worcester saw 50 to 70% increases in their earnings in that same time frame. If you didn't, the system is just completely broken, and we're always going to be focused on the wrong set of numbers and the wrong set of data. The city's always going to be earning less while it's on paper thinking it should be earning more because it's figured on percentage points that are tied to a higher economy that the city of Worcester is not actually participating in.
This is a good discussion.
We need to take us on another show. Man.
I'm taking a different direction because I got more questions to ask from this list. This is the list, by the way. Jim, have you served on any boards and commissions?
I haven't.
What is your experience in local government?
I've worked on a lot of different campaigns, and I worked at the State House for almost 8 years for former Rep. Jim Leary, and then for Rep. Vincent Pedoni.
Okay, so you've been involved with politics.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I'm always curious to find out is like if people are running up for city council right out of the gate or if they've got other things going on. Would you support zoning changes to encourage mixed-use, diverse development of existing neighborhoods to encourage walkability?
Definitely. I think the zoning laws and the zoning maps in the city are kind of antiquated.
Okay.
Walkability is a huge thing for not only economic development but also quality of life.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to keep a focus on that.
What's your position on school privatization?
I'm totally against it.
Okay.
I think we do need to focus on education. It's an important issue. That's a major quality of life issue for our city, and we just need to really focus on improving our public schools. I'm a product of it, and I think it did a good job, and it can do better. But we need to focus on that, and taking money out of the public schools to put it into other resources, I don't think would be a wise decision.
This is a transparency question, this next question. City departments, particularly the police department, have information that can help the public make good decisions about running the city. That information is often hard to access, some would say impossible. What would you do to change that?
I'd stand up and say, look, there's the Freedom of Information Act. There's, we need to get information out there. I mean, if you do the right thing and you're saying the truth, you shouldn't be scared about it, and you should get it out there.
Yeah.
If you have something to hide, then you don't get it out there. That's kind of. I'm not saying you should have something to hide, but I'm saying that's the perception that it gives. I'd be very open with everything, and I'd be very accessible to people. And if someone had an issue, I would stand up and say, hey, why aren't we finding out about this? And let the facts speak for themselves, and let people decide, what really is going on, and are they comfortable with how things are being run?
Jim, how much can you bench press?
A Melican and a half.
Have you do you know how much what your lifetime max is here?
Probably about 225.
Really?
I weigh like 250. I'm lying. I probably weigh like 270, but yeah, probably about 220.
That's pretty good.
225.
That's the most so far. I don't know. Virginia Ryan's on next week, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Have you seen The Wire?
I have.
Who's your favorite character on The Wire?
This is actually kind of funny. My favorite character is just solely based on my childhood. I mean, I remember growing up in high school, and when like Wu-Tang came out,
yeah,
I loved Method Man. So Cheese, I just his inflections, and he's the worst. Like, he's like the most diabolical character on, or one of them. I mean, that's a big statement.
He is among the more diabolical characters on a show full of them.
He is heartless.
Yes.
And he has no loyalty about anything. And so Cheese, just because he's Method Man, and I just like the way he talks and moves, it appeals to me. So Cheese would be my favorite character.
That's awesome.
This is where I wish we actually scripted these shows, and I would have had someone come out of the woods and end the show by putting an airsoft gun to Jim's head and saying, "It's for Prop Joe," and he could just drop to the ground and we could end scene.
But I do think that in the realm of kind of sociology and entertainment value of a TV show, I think Omar is probably the most fascinating character that I've seen on any type of show.
Yeah.
Having him be, this ruthless stick-up man with a very defined set of morals.
Right.
He's kind of this lone wolf guy that everyone's scared of, and then they make him gay, and it is something that you haven't seen really in Hollywood or anything, and it provided such a great, it's such a deep character.
So here's what I want to say actually who my favorite character on The Wire is, because I've been saying it's Omar, but I've been thinking about it and it's actually not true. Now Brendan has said your favorite character's got to be either Omar or Bunk because they have a code.
Well, they're the ones that are really truly defined characters. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna say, I'm not gonna.
So I don't buy. First, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I don't buy that they have a code. I feel like their code is very convenient. It's just whatever. It's just like the stuff that they don't want to do, they decide is immoral.
It's actually just laziness, right? They're lazy criminals.
It's what a lot of people have for a code. Probably my own code is the same way, right?
Don't kill taxpayers.
Exactly.
But your code isn't in the law enforcement or the drug game. I mean, it's
true.
Those are blurrier lines.
My code is not tested in the same way.
Yeah.
But let me tell you who my favorite character actually is. This is when I search my heart. My favorite character on The Wire is Brendan Walsh. And so in the final season of The Wire, one of the characters, an important part of his life is becoming involved with the soup kitchen.
Oh yeah.
And the soup kitchen is actually the Baltimore Catholic worker, Viva House. We've talked about this, but just because of this Wire thing has come up, I want to talk about it again. It's Baltimore Catholic worker Viva House, and two of the characters who are there running the soup kitchen are Brendan Walsh and his wife Willa Bickham, who both have. Willa has a very few speaking lines, so I can't say she's my favorite character, even though she's a great person. But Brendan Walsh has a number of speaking lines speaking to one of the main characters on the show. I'm just doing this to not have spoilers. And a few years ago, when my good friend Tom Lewis, who lived in Worcester, died, the funeral was down in Baltimore because he's from Baltimore originally. A bunch of us went down there and crashed on the floor of Viva House, while we were down there for the funeral, and they were super nice to me. And I had not seen The Wire at the time, but I knew that these guys had been on The Wire, and I really I know that they'd been for 40 years. Have been doing all this peace and justice work and serving the homeless and whatever in Baltimore, which is completely off my radar. I know nothing about Baltimore. All I know is that they've been on The Wire, but I really don't want to be like, dude, you've been on The Wire. But so after the eulogy or whatever, we went back to their house to get ready to go sleep on the floor of the soup kitchen there, as pictured on The Wire. And they were like, are you hungry? Do you want something to eat? So we went upstairs to the little TV room, and they gave me a beer, and they dug some vegan stuff out of the fridge. They were super good about that. And we talked for about 3 seconds, and the first thing Brendan Walsh says to me is he says, "You're involved in television, right? I got this question about when they were taping The Wire here." And he has this whole question about how he's confused about this remote direction that they were doing or whatever. And then we just talked a lot about him being both of them being on The Wire. It's my favorite. It's my favorite character on The Wire, just because it feeds into my own personal story.
You know what? I think if we're going to get philosophical, and I was just thinking this while you were talking about maybe lesser known characters or minor characters, that's actually the only right answer is that Baltimore is the character, right? Because that when you really think about the show, I mean it's 5 seasons of like character development around the city. And each one of those people that come and go throughout it, they're really just building up like this one giant like philosophical ideological character that's the city of Baltimore. All of the people are actually kind of meaningless. That's, you know, by the time you get to the 5th season, people are dropping like flies, right? Because they're kind of irrelevant. They're all just a part of this ongoing machine that is the city of Baltimore. So, future candidate, Virginia Ryan, when you come on,
you could say Baltimore itself.
Baltimore, and that's what we need to keep our eyes on the ball with when we're talking about Worcester, right? That Worcester is actually the character. We're just all participants in its story. So 8:30 in the morning.
Jim, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Brendan, thanks for being on the show. Brendan, by the way, has these toe shoes, which we
5 fingers.
pointed out. How are they working out for you?
I really like them. I'm this weekend I think we're gonna actually start running in them. I wanted everyone I've talked to about them says don't just go out running and
you got to work up your calves,
foot strength and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to wear them as much as possible,
Yeah.
and just moving naturally in them. And feet feel good, ankles feel good, and we're gonna give it a go. Not too hard, but we'll see what happens.
There you go. All right. Well, we're taping this the day before this tropical storm hits the city. I hope everything goes well with people. This is 508. We'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.